Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, and welcome to the Authentically You podcast. I'm excited to be back for another round with another amazing, authentic person doing some great things. Before we get started, though, we want to thank some of our sponsors. You can see they're piled up here in front of my laptop. As you know, I've been preaching for many, many weeks now. Our Lead and Empower Her She Talks on March 11th in Houston is just a short week away. And we are so blessed to have so many great sponsors. And some of them you see right in front of here. So, Ally Shoes, I got my pair of shoes. Ladies, let me tell you, I am not a heel person, but I have to wear heels. These are the most comfortable shoes I've ever had. They have this unique cushion in them. And so I wore them the other day to like do a test run so I could fully preach about these amazing shoes, custom designed for your feet as well. How many times have you wished that you had a shoe that just fit your foot because your foot's maybe wide or slim or whatever? Check them out at ally.com. If you're coming to our event, you're going to see this little card here. That is a discount coupon that you can get as well for this. And they do have even in-stock shoes. So if you really want your shoes fast, then you can even get them in just like 3 days. I got these in 3 days. Also, I'm going along here. Our sponsor, MLK Labs, has sent us something like 6 or 7 boxes of their delicious oatmeal and as well chips. And this stuff, ladies, if you were looking for something on the go, I took this. Let me go over here. I took this in my purse on the plane the other day. You can throw hot water in it, warm milk as well. Throw in some strawberries, some berries, whatever. It's delicious. It's just as good as that old style oatmeal that has a ton of sugar in it, but this does not. So check our sponsors out. They're really amazing. Also, I don't want to forget Strategic Advisory Board. They are one of our sponsors that donated to our event. Amazing group of people that you can check out if you want to expedite the growth of your company or you have anything you need. They have something like 250 strategic partners. They are an all-in-one place to go get your needs as a business. So definitely make sure to check out Strategic Advisory Board on there, and you can find them everywhere from LinkedIn to the websites that we're sharing as well. So thank you so much. And as well, I don't have time to hit every single She Talker and every single She Talker company, but go to leadandempowerher.com. Check out all of our She Talkers, all their businesses, their sponsorships. It's amazing. All right, so let's get to our person today who is also a She Talker and in a really cool group called Bellwether with me. This is Laverne Toombs. She is the Vice President of Development for the American Heart Association, an organization that fights heart disease, stroke, and in turn helps families and communities thrive. As a leader on the development team, Laverne uses her magnanimous, oh my gosh, I'm not saying that right, and infectious personality to help manage the fundraising team to provide with them the necessary tools and opportunities, partnering with influential corporate and community voices. Her excellent communication skills have made her a go-to for political, community, government, and educational program development, as she can execute those visions by increasing the visibility and impact of any agency that brings her on board. Her reach and effectiveness are exemplified in her most recent designation as an official TEDx speaker, inspiring her audience to embrace forgiveness through her own personal story of discovery when she was adopted at age 14. Laverne, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I am really honored to be a part of your podcast this evening.
Yeah, and I'm just so excited for you to be a part of She Talks and everything we're doing. Um, as these events get closer and closer, I get really excited because I know this is your first one to go to, but I've been to all of them. And the empowerment that comes from that, my cup is always overflowing. And it's like, I feel I'm ready for another one because we've been working like crazy. We're into the middle of spring. And so I'm so excited about this. And I watched your TEDx, which I absolutely loved. As I mentioned to you earlier, we have many, many friends who adopted kids, and then we have many friends who were adopted. And so it really hit home for me being around my friends who were either adopted or adopted children, the different things that they were dealing with that you talked about. I love that you also labeled it the F bomb. That's, everyone thinks, oh, the F bomb, but you were actually talking about forgiveness. So can you maybe tell that story about how you learned that you were adopted and how that impacted you?
Yes, and thank you so much again for this opportunity. And I'm really excited about a week from now in Houston participating in the She Talk, as well as listening to the other participants as well. But when I was asked to be a part of the TED Talk in Delaware, I really was kind of, I didn't have any idea really what I was going to talk about other than some sort of personal story. So a friend of mine and I began to kind of brainstorm on what that story would be. And I thought, over the years that I have talked to other individuals that have adopted a child or children, how important it is to share with them in the early years about their adoption. I was 14 years old. I never forget it. Matter of fact, I'm in the process of writing a book and talking a lot about that experience at 14. My mother, who was an older parent, we were from North Louisiana, which is a very rural area in North Louisiana. And because she didn't really have I guess, the insight or wisdom in regards to how to tell me that I was adopted, basically, she just set me down at the kitchen table, told me, I have something to tell you. And that's when she said, you are adopted. Of course, in my TED Talk, I talked about what does that mean? I never heard the word adoption. I had no idea what that meant. Till later, I realized I was trying to figure out, are you my mom or you're not? And for 14 years, I called this woman mother, right? And so here you are, 14, you don't never heard this word, you're confused in your mind, and you don't know how to deal with those emotions at 14.
Yeah.
So here I am, trying to deal with those emotions, ask questions, weren't able to get the answers. She told me to read the documents that were on the table. I did my best in doing that, but I still couldn't comprehend what all that meant. And because of that, I dealt with a lot of anger and bitterness for years and years towards her. And it really impacted me over the years as an adult. So in my TED Talk, I talked about, those emotions that I weren't able to identify with, right? Until I became an adult and realized that I was anger, rejection, and many other emotions that I carried into my adulthood.
My daughter's 14 right now, and she's an eighth grader in junior high, and just dealing with emotions, hormones. I mean, junior high is kind of tough as it is. So I can only imagine how that was a bit shocking, like you said, and not understanding it and throwing that into that age of your life must have been difficult. And I think it's great that you're writing a book about this because, like I mentioned, I have many, many friends who have adopted, and that's always the question. When do we tell the kid? Do we tell them at all? And maybe that's a question you can answer and I know it's different for everyone, but if it was you, when do you think is an ideal time to kind of let the children know about the adoption?
Well, that's a question that is always asked often. When is a good time to tell a child that they're adopted? I think, first of all, I always tell a parent that they need to seek counseling and get some professional help in regards to how you go about telling a child that they're adopted,
Mm,
and get some professional help as far as guidance on what to say, and as well as that child. For
mm,
me, I think that if I had been told much earlier, but as well as have gotten some professional help in being understanding that I wasn't a reject, that somebody, didn't want me or something of that sort, or here it is, this woman adopted me and I have been misled to believe that she's actually my mother. It would have been much better, I believe.
mm,
But
mhm.
because of the fact that I found out in my teens, it's just, I felt all sorts of feeling rejected,
Yeah.
and I felt lied to, right?
Mm,
And so with that, it has an actual ripple effect on a person when they find out late in life, and as well as not getting the type of help to be able to guide you through that process. So
mm,
I really don't know the answer as far as when is a good time to tell a child that they were adopted, but I would say that you don't wait till they're a teenager. I think that there's a time in their early years where they can comprehend and understand that you were adopted, and, A, B, C, and D in regards to how they will process that through therapy, through some counseling, professional counseling.
Yeah, I think that's great to know, and I agree with you. A lot of times, back in the day, I think of my parents getting counseling was taboo. That wasn't
Right.
something that people did, and now it's become so much more acceptable that there's nothing wrong with you getting counseling or therapy. It's helping you process that, and I think it's so important for people to know that, especially that it's okay for kids who are learning they're adopted, that it's okay to be in therapy or get the help and help process that because we can't always, as a parent, I want to be everything to my kids, but I can't always be everything to my kids. There's going to be some areas that maybe they need someone else to give them some guidance. And so I think that's wonderful advice that you're giving. So, besides the age factor, when you were processing this, and you mentioned that you held on to this for a long time, and that forgiveness word that you talked about, the F bomb, that you were trying to process it. And I know this may be a really big question and it may be hard to quantify it down into our time frame, but how did you move on to the path of forgiveness? Or what are some tips that we could guide maybe some other people who have gone through just like you have, learning about adoption and feeling those feelings? How did you start kind of processing and figuring out that forgiveness?
Well, that's a good question. And unfortunate for me, it took me almost 20 plus years to get to that point. And the reason for it is because, again, I had no one to talk to about this situation. It was hidden. And basically, I didn't want anyone to know that I was adopted.
Mm,
And the other thing, too, is the fact that I thought that the feelings that I was feeling was okay,
mm,
and
okay,
because I was angry, and
mm,
I pointed the finger to her because it was her fault. So why should I forgive? But a situation occurred in 2005. Now, keep in mind, I'm at 2005. I'm 45 years old, and this happened when I was 14 years old.
mm,
So in 2005, we had a storm in New Orleans called a hurricane. It was Katrina. I
mhm,
actually evacuated to North Louisiana where my mother was living at the time. She's now 80, 81, 82 years old. I
mhm,
went to visit her. But beforehand, I think I was like in my 40s, I had gotten some advice from a dear friend where I knew something about what I was feeling was wrong, but I didn't really know what to do, right? I didn't know how to express myself. So this spiritual minded individual told me that I needed to let go of the past and gave me some direction in regards to how to go about doing that.
mm,
In my TED talk, I talk about the three components, right? That is one, how, first of all, I had to learn how to forgive myself.
mm,
Number two is to forgive the other person. And number three, being able to let go. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to forgive myself. I didn't know how to forgive that other person because I blamed them for everything that happened in my life, as well as being able to let go of the past. I
mm,
didn't know how to do that because, again, with the past, there are a lot of things that happens in your life where you carry a lot of guilt, right? So that
mhm,
person said, if you can learn how to forgive yourself, let go, right? As well as, move on, then you begin to be free from those emotions that you're feeling. So here it is, 2005. I go visit my mother and I see this woman. She's 80 something years old. And I don't know. Uh, it just could dawn on me that, it comes a point in your life where you need to just make that step. And I heard that voice from that person said about forgiveness. And in other words, it dropped the F bomb on me, which was
mm,
forgiveness. I went to my mother and I asked her to forgive me for for blaming her for all the challenges and the ups and downs and the failures and all the things that I had gone through in my adult life. Would she forgive me? She looks at me, with this face, and we became very emotional. And she told me, she said, I love you. And that was the first time that I had ever heard my mother tell me that she loved me. Because
wow.
one of the things is that I never was never believed that I was capable of being loved, and I never really understood
Mm,
love. And so that's why I had so many failed relationships in my early years, because I didn't understand love. And
mm,
so when she told me that she loved me, and she told me that she did her best in raising me as her own, it
mm,
just did something to me. And it caused me at that point to realize that I had wasted 30 something years of holding on to emotions of anger and bitterness, towards a woman who did the best that she could.
mm,
And I began to feel really bad of the fact that I had held on to those emotions for so long towards someone who did their best, and she did. And when I think about the woman that I am today, I credit that all to my mother.
mm,
I credit all to her. And to this day, I think about the fact that I had no sense of appreciation, that I was a horrible daughter, that I really did not do what I was supposed to do as a daughter. And but I just thank God that I had the opportunity before she passed on. Two
mm,
years later, my mother passed away in
mm.
2007, April 15, 2007.
Wow.
Um, but she lived a wonderful life. And but the thing that really got me when she said, when the good Lord closed my eyes for the final time, I hope and pray that it would be your face that I see
Mm,
before he shut my eyes.
oh,
Um, and so, when she passed away, I remember walking into the funeral home, and it was just her and I. And I just began to relive that moment and began to thank God, just thank God that I had the sense and the wherewithal and the willingness to forgive and let
mm,
go. So
yeah.
that was the beginning of forgiveness. And then from that, lesson learned from there. And
Mhm,
I'm still learning from those
mhm,
lessons in regards to how to go about forgiving people who have done you wrong. But more importantly, it's not so much about forgiving others, but the most important lesson that I learned is how to forgive myself.
mm. Yeah.
Okay. And how to let go of past mistakes, past decisions, bad decisions, bad choices. How do you let go and move on and live the life and live the very purpose that was assigned just for me?
Oh my gosh, it's powerful. Everything you're saying is so powerful and it resonates so much with me. And I'm sure it's resonating with a lot of people because I'm sure I know I have, and many other people have had that moment of how do we forgive someone who has wronged us? And hanging on to, unforgiveness and anger, as you talked about, can be so toxic in our lives. And I can definitely relate that life is too short to hang on to something like that. When you have people in your life pass away, you suddenly realize like, wow, life is a lot shorter than I thought I thought it was. So I just think that's powerful what you're saying. And you definitely need to write a book because everything you're saying is so powerful. I'm really excited for you to be at She Talks. And just a little side note, will you be talking about this or can you give us a little sneak preview of what you'll be covering at She Talks?
Yeah. So the title of my talk is called The T-shirt.
Oh, awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. I am. I just, for those of you guys listening, like seriously, I know, okay, I'm the creator of this, but I cannot take credit for the amazing women that we have in this because every time you ladies walk in and you share your story, it's just like, wow, like I'm impacted and it makes change. And then it just kind of starts this circle, right? Like we're connected, then we're connected, and the more connect. So I love this. And this talk on forgiveness is so important. I think as women in particular, we're really hard on ourselves, more so than our male counterparts. Not saying that men aren't hard on themselves, but as women, I think we put a lot of expectations, cultural expectations on ourselves. And when we don't meet those, we're so rough on ourselves, right? Forgiving ourselves is so hard sometimes. And I always say this I say, it's funny how someone who loves us, can give us, an amazing compliment, right? And we kind of brush it off. But someone who doesn't know us can say something negative to us. Someone who doesn't know us and doesn't care about us. And we will hold on to that for so long, but not hold on to the compliment or the love that has come from that person who loves us. And so, this is something my 14-year-old daughter is learning. Someone says something mean. I'm like, hey, You don't know them, who cares? Let it go. But mom, it was so mean, but that's not you, and I just noticed that. So when you talk about forgiving yourself, I agree with you. It's a tough step, but something that we so desperately need. So I wanted to ask you as we come to a close of the podcast, as I always ask everyone, if you could go back and if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would you tell yourself?
Oh wow, it is a lot. But one, I think understanding my purpose.
Mm,
If I truly understood my purpose in life, I would have made a lot of uh, a lot of changes. A lot of things in my life wouldn't have happened if I understood my purpose. So what I would tell my younger self is to really seek my purpose, my mission, and my assignment. And that I believe that I would have been more focused in regards to fulfilling what I was actually created on this earth to do.
mm. Yeah, that's powerful. And what I'm really excited is that we have a lot of youth coming to this She Talks conference. So I'm excited for you to impart that wisdom on them at such a young age, because it's so powerful for our youth to find their why. And if they can find that early on, I didn't find mine early on either. It took me close into my like mid 30s before I really figured out my why and my purpose. I'd love to do that for our youth, and bring that in. And I wanted to quote something that you said in your talk. You said, true forgiveness is when you say thank you for the experience. And I just think that's powerful that you're able to say that. And hopefully, with your book too, you can guide people on how they can eventually say that as well. So besides your book and also everything you're doing with the American Heart Association, is there anything else happening that you want us to know about? Any events, or anything like that that we can promote and push for you for our listeners?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm here at the Marriott. We have our Go Red for Women luncheon tomorrow,
Mm,
which is a fundraiser because, as you know, heart disease is the highest killer among women. And
yeah.
so we're having that luncheon to raise money to continue with research in regards to heart disease and stroke. Other than that, I'm almost finished with my book, which you mentioned. I should have
Yay,
that finished probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks,
so
and hopefully I'll
exciting.
be able to launch it this year. So I'm really, really excited. This is something that I've been wanting to do for years, but didn't believe that I had the abilities or the skill set or the discipline to be able to do it. But thank God that I finally got the courage to start writing. And I'm really excited about it. And so I hope I can join you guys as one of the New York Times best-selling authors and sell millions of copies, but most importantly, change and transform women's lives or individuals, but primarily women's lives.
Absolutely. And we will promote the heck out of that. So you got to make sure you tag us. We will get it out to all of our She Talker and She Talker networks. So we'll make sure to do that. I'm so excited for you. I'm so
Well,
excited for that.
well,
So
thank you.
yeah, and thank you so much for being on the show and sharing something that's so transparent and vulnerable, because I know that this podcast is going to resonate with so many people. And I appreciate that because, as I mentioned, we have so many friends who have either adopted or were adopted. And this is important for them to learn about. So thank you so much for being on the show. As I always say, live, love, laugh, and always be your authentic self.